I've had to reconcile within me an adoration, a love, a reverence for a culture, a dharma that allows a situation in which there is discrimination, because there is a culture that is permitted to continue to exist in which women are kept aside. It is that Hollywood way of thinking that tells us you are your body, its size, its shape, its color, its bank account, its relationships, that leads us to feeling less than in some way. And therefore leads me to either want to numb that experience that I'm having inside, or that leads me to depression or misery or competition or greed. All of these things that end up causing suffering. There's battles ranging everywhere.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button, because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake. Hello and welcome to another episode of For Soul's Sake, a conversation, an opportunity where you can listen for the next hour to a connection in which I bring the best of wellness, the best of spirituality, the best of all things transformation to your earphones, to your living room. And I'm really grateful today to be joined by a guest that I feel could bring some really cool, inspirational nuggets that might actually change the way that you live from today. We are joined by, brace yourselves, Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati from India. Thank you so much for joining us. We're deeply grateful for your presence. I want to share a few facts here that I've got. She's been living in India for almost 30 years. She's got a PhD in psychology from Stanford University. She's the author of the #1 best-selling memoir, Hollywood to the Himalayas, A Journey of Healing and Transformation. She's been transforming lives for the last 30 years, and I'm just deeply grateful that you're here, being present with us. Thank you so much.
Such a joy to be here.
I feel a little bit nervous. I'm joined by someone who has so much spiritual wealth and so much joy in your eyes, and just to be with you, I'm just deeply grateful. Thank you.
We are not even separate.
Oh.
Beautiful. It's so beautiful to be here.
Just a short trip over to the UK, and somehow we made it work with the schedules. I'm deeply grateful.
Divine plan.
Divine plan. Divine plan. If you've not yet been to Paramatniketan, please do go and visit Sadhviji. I'm sure she'll be very happy to connect with you there. But I wanted to get started with a little bit about your experience of sharing spirituality, Vedic spirituality, from the perspective, from the lens of the body of someone who's living in the female body, and how that's been, because we meet a lot of sadhus who are male, who come from the background of, I guess spirituality generally we see has been quite male-oriented. And your experience of being a leader, being a guide.
It's been an incredible blessing and an incredible challenge, both.
I can imagine.
And on a personal spiritual level, I'm actually so grateful for the challenge, because it has really pushed me into places that I otherwise would not have had to go. If you are in the body of one who is automatically accepted as whatever role you're playing, in my case, spiritual leader, but this pertains regardless of what your dharma purpose may be, then it's not something you have to look at. And because I'm in not only a female body, but a white female body.
That was going to be my next question.
It's been something that is unexpected in the Hindu Vedic world of religion in India. And so it's continually had to push me into a space of both identification as, yes, I am female, proud to be female, excited to be female, celebrate and honor and revere that feminine aspect. No, I don't wish I had been born in a boy's body so that I could fill in the blank. And there are lots of blanks that have arisen over the years. And the number of people who have said, and the number of times I've heard, God, it's really too bad that you're not a guy because then you could blank.
Oh, wow. I can't believe that. I get the complete converse. When I first started sharing mantra and kirtan, the first thing not the first, but one of the first feedbacks I got was, it would have been better if you were white and female. And I was like, what? Okay, well, I guess I'll have to live with that then.
I think the world of devotional chanting, especially that coming out of the West, is definitely much more anchored in embrace to the female. The world of, for everybody listening rather than watching, the world of saffron-clad, monastic, robed, ordained religious leaders is still very much a man's world. But as I said, I've been really grateful for the challenge, even though it's been really difficult at times, for several reasons. First of all, my guru, His Holiness Puja Swami Chidananda Saraswati Ji, who is the head of Paramarth Nikatan, a internationally revered spiritual leader, is so committed to working for gender equality, women's empowerment, whether it's on the ground in terms of the women's empowerment programs and centers and vocational training that we run, whether it's the work with water, sanitation, hygiene that was catalyzed by recognizing that women didn't have toilets to use and they were defecating in the open and therefore not eating and not drinking during the day lest they had to go to the bathroom. Men would kind of drop their pants anywhere, but with women, especially Indian women, there's so much more of a sense of what we call maryada, much more of a sense of, dignity, that they would not just lift up their sari anywhere. And so that touched him so deeply. But so on that level of service, but also on the level of leadership. I mean, he's been the one who has created that space and then pushed me into that space from the beginning. And it's been really beautiful, not just for me, but for people watching, because it has certainly not been without controversy.
I can imagine.
It has not been without people suggesting in a variety of ways that maybe it would be better for him to have men around rather than women around, and to not create space for women. But he's been so adamant about that divine feminine, that divine Shakti, that criticalness of giving voice to women's leadership. So I think me being a female and him intuiting deeply the dharma that I had of leading has created a situation where, as a renowned male leader, he has found himself quite publicly insisting on space being created for the feminine. And then on a deep personal spiritual level, it's been really beautiful because I've had to reconcile within me a reverence, an adoration, a love, a reverence for a culture, a dharma, the dharma of Sanatan Dharma, the culture of Indian culture, what we speak of as Bharatiya Sanskriti, that allows a situation in which there is discrimination. I mean, it doesn't allow it scripturally. It doesn't allow it by any of the actual tenets.
You mean discernment or discrimination?
No, I mean discrimination. The culture itself, the Dharma itself doesn't, but so many of the proponents today, and this is why you see so few ordained female leaders, because there is a culture that is permitted to continue to exist in which women are kept aside. And so for me to embrace and revere and adore and love the culture and the Dharma and the leaders of the culture and the Dharma and the saints and the gurus and the masters, and to have that incredible reverence for them, even while they may not be accepting of my role of a leader because of the female body.
Wow.
And that's been so powerful spiritually, because I was just sharing this the other day with people from the women's leadership group, because the mind so easily jumps into either or boxes. And so either you say, my female body is right, is perfect, is divine, is exactly as it should be, therefore they are wrong for discriminating against it, for not creating space for it, for not permitting this. Or you say, they, the masters, the gurus, the leaders, are right, therefore my female body is somehow less than, and maybe if I'm really good in my next birth, I will take birth in a male body and therefore not have these limitations. And it's so easy for the mind to go back and forth like a ping pong ball.
Understandably.
In between these two boxes. It's one or the other. Either I'm right and they're wrong, or they're right and my body is wrong.
What about this and?
That's exactly. And so for me, the spiritual opportunity of dropping into yes and. Yes, I adore and revere the Dharma, the teachings, the culture, and so many of these masters.
Yeah.
And I adore and revere and celebrate this female body and would not trade it in. And those two things can coexist in me as long as I can drop into a spaciousness in which it doesn't have to be either or. And that spiritual experience of spaciousness is something that I'm so grateful for, because it's enabled me to drop into it in so many situations other than just the female body, male world of spirituality.
Yeah.
But that was what originally pushed me into it, because I felt like that ping pong ball going back and forth. Either I hate myself or I hate them. And it was kind of back and forth. And I finally, in a very deep moment of meditation, having been ceremonially removed from a stage in which I was sitting simply because I was female. And the words that were used were, this is a Mahatma stage. Now, Mahatma literally means great soul, as you know. And the idea that somehow a great soul could not exist in the body of a female.
Mm-hmm. How close-minded.
Right. And I had been put up on the stage when we arrived because people knew I was a leader. But the Sanstha, the organization, the guru whose stage it was, felt very strong, exactly, that Mahatma meant male body. And I went, they had put this couch right in the front, covered with a beautiful saffron sheet, very respectfully for me to go and sit in the audience. And instead of that, I went and sat on the banks of the sacred river and just meditated until I could find the spaciousness in me to love and revere him and the lineage that he comes from, the dharma that he comes from, the incredible richness of spiritual culture that he comes from, while simultaneously loving and honoring and celebrating and revering the female self. And that experience has been so profoundly deep and important, not just around issues of gender, but around everything that cannot be stuck in a box.
Yeah. I so much appreciate what you've shared, because the next layer up from, in my conscious understanding of what we're speaking about, the next layer up is, yes, based on the body, but then also based on lineage. Like when I first came across the teachings of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, my thinking was, in my opinion, and still I'm learning what that is, but quite closed-minded. Anyone that didn't believe that Krishna was God was to be reprimanded, to be disassociated with, and coming across the teachings of the personalities that I'm now connected with, such as Radhanath Swami, Satyanandana Swami, they've opened up my mind to appreciating God in different flavors. And for me, it's not about trying to correct everybody, but seeing that this is my Lord in different garb, in different dress. And so for me, I've really come across this change in consciousness of loving spiritualists from all different backgrounds. Whether they prescribe to my particular belief system or not, that's okay. So long as the house in which we all live in, which is the house of the Supreme, it doesn't matter that there's different rooms in there. Just that there's a place for me to sit, I should be grateful. And that the neighbor next door maybe has a different lifestyle, but we're in the same house.
Absolutely.
So why bring people down based on differences in opinion? I don't think, for me, divinity, God, the Supreme, I don't think that person or I can't imagine they would be upset at me for loving someone because they love them differently than I do.
Absolutely. The way that I like to think about it and explain it is, if you imagine, like, I love you. Now, let's say maybe I'm an eyes person. And so I tell everybody, all of my friends, everybody who will listen to me, oh, God, Radhika's eyes. I can see my soul in his eyes. I can
look
see
into the camera.
I can see the divine in his eyes. And if I were a poet or an artist, I would write poems about your eyes and paint pictures of your eyes. Now, somebody else also loves you, but they're more of a hand person. Maybe they need a hand to hold at this moment of their life. So they tell all of their friends, God, his hands are so strong but soft. And they're going to write poems and paint pictures of your hands. And somebody else needs a shoulder to cry on or just to lay their head on at this time. And so they're going to tell everybody and write poems and paint pictures of your beautiful, strong, wide, but soft, ever-present shoulders. Now, we all know we love the same Radhika. We're fine with each other. The dilemma comes with our followers, mine who say, no, Radhika is eyes. And this person's who say, no, he's hands. And somebody else says, no, he's shoulders. Now, you don't care which part of you we love. You don't care how we get into that love of you. Somebody wants to sit on your lap. Somebody wants to hold your hand. Somebody wants to hug you. Somebody wants to just listen to you, sing with you. Doesn't matter. You don't have any preference. You think about a parent, right? One of the kids is super affectionate, another is less affectionate, but they love you just as much. One paints you pictures, another writes you songs, another makes you burnt toast for breakfast in bed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Every one of them is loving you, and you love them equally. And so if a parent is able to love 2, 3, 4, 5 kids who call them different things. One says mom, one says mama, one says mum, one says mummy, one says ma, one says whatever it may be. Doesn't care.
Right.
Mom doesn't care. Mom doesn't say, oh, you call me this, so I'm going to, give you extra love and blessings.
Right.
The mom knows they're all calling to me. So if a human mother, a human father, a human friend is able to do that, really we think God's not able to do that?
Right.
I don't think God cares how we get in. It just matters. Get connected. So if somebody else is using a different name, a different way, it's just a different way of connecting to the same ultimate oneness, ultimate divinity. We live on the banks of Ganga. And the Ganga River is the bestower of liberation, the mother goddess. But it's a 2,500 kilometer river. So there's an infinite number of ways you can get into that river. You want to come to us at Parmarth Niketan and walk down our marble steps and hold onto a chain and bathe in the river? Great. You want to walk up to Ramjula, a little bit up river where there's a sandy beach and go in the sandy beach? No problem. You want to go a little farther up to Lakshmanjula, there's a big rock, people jump off of it? No problem. Ganga's not giving extra blessings based on how you get in. It's totally irrelevant. Just get in. And once you're in, it doesn't matter how somebody else got in. You wouldn't say, oh, well, I came down the steps and you came off the beach, therefore we are somehow different or separate. Here we are in the same river. Let's just bathe together.
Yeah. I don't think there's a case for loving the same God and hating one another doing it. It's almost like saying, don't love God so nicely.
It's not only violently hypocritical,
right,
but it's deeply ignorant because, think about it. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Krishna tells us very clearly, however the devotee worships me, in whatever form the devotee worships me, I appear to the devotee in that form.
Yeah, reciprocate.
You worship me as Christ, there I am in Christ. You worship me any way you worship me, there I am. You worship me in the form of the tree in your backyard, there I am. Jesus Christ says, love thy neighbor as thyself. Right now, this actually used to trouble me because I'm a scientist by heart and by experience. And I used to ask all of the devout Christians I knew, like, did he clarify what he meant by neighbor? Right? I mean,
what kind of neighbor?
how far down the road? The guy across the street, the guy next door, a
Right.
50-yard radius.
Right.
Like, is there any clarification here?
It's funny you mentioned that because my next door neighbor when I was a child, I really didn't like that person. And
I
so when
didn't even know their names.
I knew my names, but I still remember him. David, if you're never going to watch this, David, but now I look back on it, I still love you. Wherever you are in the world, you're loved. We just didn't get along at that time. You didn't pass my ball back when I kicked it over your fence. But
And that piece is so beautiful. And you say, okay, so that's the guy next door. That's David next door. But what about David down the block or 2 blocks away? And then as I entered this remarkable space of religious leadership and found myself with leaders of the Christian tradition, I started asking them as well, like, was there ever any clarification given? And what everybody has said is no. Now, here's how the scientist in me has therefore come to understand that teaching. You cannot love someone from a human perspective if you don't even know them. If I don't know you, how can I love you, right? Now, in your case with David, you knew him and you didn't love him. But if you don't know someone, you certainly can't love them. Even if you know everybody's name on your block, do you know everybody's name in your zip code? Do you know everybody's name in a 2-kilometer radius? So if Jesus never gave us a radius of what he meant by love thy neighbor, we have to assume there is no boundary, which means everybody could be your neighbor. And if you don't know them, how can you love them? The only answer is love God and know that every single being is an embodiment of, a manifestation of, a reflection of, a creation of the divine. And that is exactly what in our Hindu tradition we are taught. It's what in so many of the other religious traditions that I've learned about that we learn in just different ways. And so this is not a singular teaching of only what Bhagavan Krishna is teaching us. It's actually what the depths of leaders, prophets, mystics
of all traditions
have said is the divine is in all. We are not separate. And so absolutely, you're right. However you worship that divine, and again, this is what Bhagavan Krishna told us anyway. So if you are a bhakt of, a devotee of Krishna, this is Krishna's own words. However the devotee worships me, I appear in that form, meaning any form is my form.
Yeah. And even in the Bhagavad Gita, the way that it's structured about starting with offering your fruitive work. You know, if you can't be solely surrendered and devotional towards God, then at least offer the fruits of your work. And if you can't do that, do this. And if you can't do that, do this. And that kind of compromise, well, I don't know if it's a compromise, but the open-mindedness of God is so attractive. I remember reading the Bhagavad Gita, and if I'm honest, the first time I read maybe up to chapter 2, and I was like, this is too much for me right now. So I put it down, picked it up again, put it down, picked up again, put it down. And it was a case of me going back and forth. And then I came across a teacher of mine, a mentor of mine, who told me, just understand the story first. Because there's so many different commentaries of the Bhagavad Gita that I was getting really lost with all the different thoughts. And he said, just read the translations. So that's what I did. Read the translations, got an overview of the story. And that kind of drew me in to see the open-mindedness of the way in which we can love divinity in so many different ways, facets. And if I'm honest with you, if you haven't got a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, this is the plug. All right, I'm doing it right now. Go and get a copy. Go on Amazon and get a copy of the Bhagavad Gita and just read the translation of the words. Commentary you can choose afterwards, but at least get an understanding of how loving God is, or divinity is, or the Supreme Person is, even on a battlefield. which is incredible. The scene is incredible. It's better than Lord of the Rings, let me tell you now. Get a copy.
And it gives us, there's a reason that philosophers from across the world, of every religion, of every tradition, have said the Bhagavad Gita is the scripture I turn to, or the book of inspiration I turn to, or the wisdom I turn to, or the quintessential guide for life. Because that's really what it is. It's a guide for life. Nowhere in it does it say, thou shalt worship in this way. It doesn't say, thou shalt call me by this name. It doesn't say, thou shalt do this ceremony, thou shalt chant this mantra, thou shalt go to this temple or church or synagogue. Doesn't say any of that.
Yeah.
What it says over and over again is, you want to get into the river of divinity this way? Wonderful. This way? Wonderful. That way? Wonderful. You want to read your way into it, philosophize your way into it, understand your way into it. Beautiful. You want to love your way into it? Beautiful. You want to just turn every moment, every action, everything you do into your spiritual practice? Wonderful.
Okay.
Whatever it is. And, you mentioned the battlefield, and there's a reason that I refer back to the Bhagavad Gita so frequently in teachings and satsang, because life is a battlefield. And whether it's the battlefield of the mind, how do I deal with my own negative thoughts or my ego or my grudges or my anger? Or how do I deal with my in-laws or my boss or my neighbors or my employees or
Quite the
whatever it may
battlefield.
be. Exactly. Or whether it's, how do I find my dharma? What are we going to do about violence and climate change and hunger and destruction of our planet's resources? There's battles ranging everywhere. And the teaching, these 700 beautiful verses, whatever the battle that you're facing in your life, it gives you how to deal with it, whatever your religion. And it never says, change your religion. It never says, become this, subscribe to that. What it says is, you, wherever you are, whoever you are divine. You are inseparable from the divine. And here's how to live your life. Remember the divine. Remember your true self. And engage in action. And here's how to do it.
For future generations, I'm changing the topic, I'm going completely on a different tangent. For future generations who are going to take up this practice, it's already clear to me that things are changing, to the way that my parents' generation practiced Vedic spirituality, to the generation currently discovering it, even those who are in India that have kind of rediscovered, reawakened their affinity towards Vedic spirituality. It seems that the generational tides of change are upon us. We're seeing different people practicing different ways, different practices. And for example, when we're chanting in front of audiences, I don't wear robes and I don't wear tilak, and I dress in Western garb. And it seems that there is a certain shift happening in terms of the way in which people are approaching the Bhagavad Gita as well. The way that, even as I'm seeing more and more people are speaking about the Bhagavad Gita without God, speaking of it as a motivational book. There's different ways in which things are changing. Do you have any warnings? Well, warnings is a strong word, but do you have any disclaimers that you wish to, if you were to talk, I don't know, to the generations that follow, that people that are just discovering this now?
I think my biggest warning would be, and this is true for the Bhagavad Gita, but it's also true for every aspect of Vedic tradition, literature, culture, teachings, everything that comes out of Indian ancient spirituality, yogic traditions, all of that. The warning is the same. Do not use it to rationalize you continuing to think and live the way that you want to continue to think and live. The dilemma with the Hindu tradition and its openness, its greatness can also be something that we have to be really careful of, because it's so open and it says, no problem, worship me anyway, no problem. You don't want to do puja? Fine. You want to do it? Fine. And that openness can tend to be co-opted by people who are looking to basically continue to live the way they want to live, fulfilling whether it's egoic desires, whether it's false identifications, whatever it may be. They can find some word, some phrase, and
justify,
turn it around, pull it out of context, and use that to justify their way of being. So my disclaimer and warning would be, let spirituality change you. Don't try to change spirituality. If you want to keep living in ways that you know, because we all know, you don't need Krishna to tell you what's wrong or right. We know. Dogs know. Dog steals a piece of bread. You know, in India on the streets, you've got these people selling things on little carts. Dog steals a piece of bread from a cart. It then goes, looks around. Nobody's there. It'll sit and eat it right there. Anybody's there, it's going to run behind a wall. Monkeys jump down from the telephone poles, steal fruit. Nobody's there, they're going to sit and eat it right there. Anybody's there, they're going to run away and eat it far away. Dogs and monkeys know what's wrong and what's right. We know. If you know inside of you that a particular choice is not actually in the highest service of your spiritual growth, recognize that. Acknowledge it. You're human. You're here on a human path. It's part of your karmic journey. No problem. You can't change today, change tomorrow. Can't change tomorrow, change day after. But don't co-opt spiritual teachings in order to justify that, so that you lose the motivation to go deeper that actually leads to change.
So many people of Indian origin actually have said, for example, that Lord Shiva smokes hashish, so therefore I should too.
Right, and you know, Krishna had thousands of wives. Why not? I can have just 5.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, you hear it all. You hear. I've heard it all.
And we could give all the arguments for why not. But
and
that's
this is
the point.
That's the issue. Is pretty much if you're pulling any teaching that seems to condone promiscuity or indulgence in substances that pull you out of being conscious and present and mindful and aware and awake in the present moment, that pull you out of awareness of oneness and compassion. People do it with the law of karma all the time. Oh, I don't have to help this person. If they're poor, it must be their karma to be poor. So whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, whether it's not donating money to help other people, people are able to co-opt so many teachings to just justify their
I'm a good person.
particular way of living. Exactly. And the truth is, we know. Everybody knows. You know it. And so it's all right. Again, you're human. Okay, you were selfish. Fine.
Yeah.
acknowledge it, open yourself to it, and then work with it.
Mm.
But for God's sakes, don't co-opt incredibly powerful teachings to justify promiscuity in the name of tantra or, whatever. And just call it what it is.
Yep.
And you want to change it, work to change it. You don't want to change it, no problem. I am not the moral police. But allow spirituality and the teachings and the Gita and all of these beautiful scriptures to stay in their powerful truth for those who want to dive into that powerful truth.
Yeah. Know that the teachings are there to understand that you're a spiritually divine person. Who is divinity? What is the connection between the first two aforementioned things? Not for, like you said, co-opting into this lifestyle or that lifestyle. The essence is there. So if you're looking for those things, if you're looking for spiritual truth, these are the texts for you, but not to justify XYZ activity.
Well, and interestingly, this XYZ activity are all things that we do when we don't recognize the fullness of who we are.
For sure.
I only need to eat, drink, use drugs, engage in promiscuity, do these things that I inside don't feel right about, so I'm looking for ways to justify them. I only need to do them in the first place when I'm not aware of the fullness and the divinity of who I am, when I identify as the physical body. Yeah. This is what I call the Hollywood way of thinking. You mentioned my memoir, Hollywood to the Himalayas. And on the one hand, it's the actual story of how I, as a 25-year-old white American female, ended up a Hindu renunciant monastic living in the Himalayas. But it's also the journey of a mindset shift, which is actually the critical piece, because it's not the physical body shift, but the mindset shift that brings about the healing and the transformation. And you don't have to become a monk to have that experience. You don't have to live in the Himalayas. There's plenty of people living there who haven't had the mindset shift. You can have it anywhere. But it is that Hollywood way of thinking that tells us you are your body. Its size, its shape, its color, its bank account, its relationships, that leads us to feeling less than in some way. And therefore leads me to either want to numb that experience that I'm having inside, or that leads me to depression or misery or competition or greed. All of these things that end up causing suffering. If I'm using sex or food or alcohol or shopping as a way to escape present moment, I'm not going to enjoy it anyway. A, it's not going to work, and B, I'm not going to get anything that I'm looking for in it. Yeah. And what spirituality teaches us, what the Himalayan way of thinking says, you're not your body. You have a body. Love it, celebrate it. Whatever the gender may be, whatever the size may be, whatever the shape may be. It's a vehicle for your awakening. It's the medium through which you experience consciousness. Celebrate it, love it, honor it, and recognize it isn't you. You are soul, you are spirit, you are truth, you are love, you are consciousness, you are full and infinite. And so you don't need to fill yourself with money or titles or prestige or food or alcohol or whatever it may be in order to feel that fullness. Yeah. And that's ultimately what spirituality gives us, is It's not about, can I please have an excuse to keep living how I'm living? It's, how can I experience a truth that makes me live differently automatically?
Yeah.
It's not I stop these things because they're bad or wrong. It's I stop them because I no longer need them.
A higher sense of happiness. Yeah, stopping looking for happiness in the most unnatural places and connecting with a true, well, I don't want to say a true, but a higher happiness.
A sustainable happiness.
Sustainable.
I mean, there's certainly nothing wrong with enjoying a chocolate ice cream cone.
Hey, ho, I like
but,
that.
But then it's over.
Yeah.
5 minutes later, it's over.
Yeah.
And so wouldn't it be nice to be able to access something that wasn't dependent on people being nice to me, people appreciating me, people respecting me, the stock market going the way I want it to go, everything in life going the way that I want it to go. If I didn't need that, and I were able to access a happiness, a joy, a peace that actually came from a stable place within, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed spending time with you and hearing what I would say the essence in a new shade. And I think that what you've spoken, what you've shared is so congruent and so much alive in my life, and the grace in which you've shared it. And see, I was really interested to see whether, and forgive me for being crude and being so straightforward and to the point.
I love that, by the way.
I was curious to see whether you had been able to not overcome, that's maybe the wrong word, but to process the female body leadership complex. I don't know if I'm saying it in the right way, and if it's offensive, you can correct me. But I wanted to see whether that had been lived, and I can honestly say from my brief time with you that you are becoming or are a realized person. And the way that you shared that story about being by the Ganga and being, let's face it, disrespected. And for me, I would have been storming off and I don't know, doing a social media post about it or something. But that you went and sat by the Ganga, I was like, that's so graceful. The true sign of spirituality in people is, yes, of course, loving God is the prime thing. But then by extension, how you love others on different paths and different paramparas and different lineages and different, people who worship the Ganga, people who worship Lord Krishna. It's not that we have to then, and for me, that was the real piece around this podcast, is I wanted to really appreciate and see whether here is a person that worships differently to me, but the essence is still so much there.
Yeah. And
for that, I can only fold my palms and pranam and say thank you, because I guess my mind is at ease and at peace, and I'm just deeply grateful that we were able to have this conversation. I don't know, Sadhviji, do you do quickfire rounds? Is that something that you do?
What does that mean?
A quickfire, one word, one sentence, questions, answers. I don't know. What
sure.
Goes. Yeah, let's try
Why
it.
not?
I've never done this with a sadhu before, so let's try it.
Okay.
I did it with the last guest.
I'm open to anything.
Let's try it out. They're nice questions.
I didn't take a vow against that, so no problem. As long as it doesn't violate the vows I took, we're good.
It's well ethicked, I hope. Okay, question number 1. One word, one sentence.
Okay.
Answers. What's something that you're curious about right now in your life?
Aging. I'm 53.
Wow.
And shifting into a place of being an elder in a community, which is such a fascinating and beautiful place to be. And of course, aging in a female body with menopause and all of that, and finding yourself back with things happening in the body and realizing, oh, wow, yes, here's what the body is doing now.
That's definitely something. I mean, I'm curious because I've now got this mayonnaise-shaped patch around my face, vegan mayonnaise.
Yes.
But it's every time I look in the mirror, I'm like, I'm getting old. I'm losing hair.
I am fascinated by stepping into that place. I'm fascinated by changes in my body.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by all of it and just sort of watching it.
Right. Me too. Wow. Question number 2. What's something you're personally working through at the moment?
Shifting from a place of doing directly to empowering others to do. The first many years, I would say at least 10 to 15 years of my life in India, were just service as seva, sort of whatever needed to be done, I was the one to do it.
Yeah.
And over the last many years, as my dharma, my purpose, my role has shifted much more into leadership and teaching, there's still so much of an instinct in places of like, oh, I'll do that. And then you realize there just actually isn't enough time in the day. I cannot simultaneously do it all. And to recognize and realize, oh, actually, there are other people who can do all of that. You no longer need to be the one to do that. You just need to empower others and then let it go.
Yeah.
And it's been another fascinating and beautiful and exquisite
It's a
shift in life, yes.
I can totally appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going through that right now in the sense that it's not happened through... I guess it has happened in one sense through inspiration. The community that we have here in London, the Kirtan community, has stepped up, and then it makes me, have to detach from the result because it's going to be different. The result's going to be different because someone else has got their hands on it. And it's also been a case of I've never had to look after someone without paying them. And so it's this is a whole other podcast, to be honest, so we're not going to go down the tangent, but I can
Save next time.
Yeah. There's so much that we can talk about with that. Anyway, I resonate with what you're talking about. Question number 3. In short, this is a good one for this moment. What legacy would you like to leave behind in this world?
That grace does not discriminate. That grace, divine presence, divine experience, awakening is available and possible for everybody. Not just in terms of differences of gender or races or religion, but specifically with regard to this human experience. I was given an experience of spiritual transformation, awakening, realization, whatever you call it, spontaneously. When I arrived in India on the banks of the Ganga, I had never meditated. I had never done spiritual work. And what I've seen over all of these years is our spiritual work is there to enable us to access the grace which is already there. It's not that grace comes because you meditated.
Wow.
It's not that grace comes because you prayed or you went to temple or you chanted. These things purify our sight and our mind so we can experience that which is already there. But grace doesn't care if you got up at 4 a.m. to meditate or you hit the snooze alarm and went back to sleep. Grace is there anyway.
Yeah.
The getting up at 4 a.m. is going to make you more likely to be able to experience grace in your life.
Yeah.
But grace is not saying, you don't deserve me today.
Yeah.
You lied on your taxes. You cheated on your husband or wife. I'm not there for you.
Right.
If you've got a guilty conscience and you're engaging in things that you know aren't right, you're going to have a more difficult time accessing it. But grace is there for all. And as someone who spent the first 25 years of her life feeling distinctly unworthy of grace, of love, of so much, the idea that not only was I worthy, but that I was inseparable from the divine was in and of itself the most life transformational awareness experience, knowing.
A guru and a disciple were in conversation. The disciple asked the guru, will I reach God realization by chanting all the mantras that you've prescribed to me? By rising in the morning, by doing all the various different services that you've allocated to me? Dear Guru, by doing all of that, will I achieve God? Will I receive God's grace? And the Guru says, no. The disciple's like, what? Why am I doing all this then? What's the point? Why am I running around doing all these things then? Why am I chanting all these endless mantras, rising in the morning and doing? The Guru says, so that you're awake when the sun rises.
Yes.
So that you're awake when the sun rises. And when my Guru, my beloved spiritual teacher, told me this story, I was like, I almost felt like flopping on the floor, and you know, it really makes you think that it's not that this grace is waiting for us to chant. It's already there, but sometimes the chakshus, the vision, needs to be open.
Yes.
And to see that it's already available. It's already there. And so when you said it, it just kind of went joop, straight to the heart, because I was like, I've heard that one before, and I have to remind myself that all of these hours spent in front of the harmonium and in audiences of kirtan, it's not that I'm trying to achieve something that's already there. It's there's no achieving, it's receiving.
Yes.
And
it's re-remembering.
Yeah, reawakening. This has been a really, really wonderful podcast. Thank you, Sadhviji. I really deeply appreciate it. And I'm excited now to come to Rishikesh. I want to...
I'm so glad.
Just tell me how to serve. Come. But that's the main thing. You have to... When I'm there, it's no... I want to serve. You tell me how to serve. That's what I want.
Beautiful.
I want to give service.
Beautiful. It's been such a joy. And thank you so much for using this power of technology to reach into people's homes, offices, lunch hours, jogging, gyms, wherever they're listening, and fill them with something that's touching them on such a deep level, that's re-reminding them, whether you're driving now or you're jogging now or you're cooking now or you're grocery shopping now or whatever you're doing now, walking the dog now, you are soul. You are inseparable from the divine. You are just divine walking dog or divine grocery shopping or divine washing dishes or divine in a form that is experiencing such anger at someone that they had to walk away and turn on this podcast. But no matter where you are, no matter what form, no matter what particular role you're playing, ultimately the core of who you are is divine. And for you to be re-reminding people of that is in and of itself such an extraordinary service and such a critical service.
Thank you. See you all on the next episode of For Soul's Sake. If you enjoyed this podcast, you're sure to appreciate my conversation with Janavi Harrison, where we delve into the crossroads of spirituality, progress, and relationships whilst I was in India.
Creativity and being artful is something that everyone has and everyone can access. And I think it's more about, again, connecting to that deeper place within ourselves of intuition and playfulness, the sense of lightness, which can be quite hard in life. There's a lot of things to feel heavy about, but we are much more like that naturally as children.